So, hey, look, I don't really want to produce a whole series of coronavirus videos, but it's kind of the thing that's front of mind and stressing all business owners out at the moment. So, I guess over the next couple of weeks, I kind of need to talk about it in a roundabout way. And on the other hand, there's no point in just pushing out sort of standard videos, which you're not going to find relevant at this particular time. So this week, I'd like to talk about what you're doing with your virtual assistants during this crisis. And that's coming right up. So how is the coronavirus impacting the virtual assistant business? Well, it's interesting. So as you know, I own a company called Virtual Done Well in the southern Philippines. That's been an interesting experience over the last couple of weeks. So I'll tell you what's been happening there, and that'll tell you what's happening in BPOs in the Philippines, business process outsourcing centers. And then I'll also share some tips on how I'm working with my team and the sort of things that we're doing now that we weren't necessarily doing a couple of weeks ago. And that'll give you a few ideas for your business and for your VA as well. VA or VAs, because I know some of you have quite a few. Okay, so what's been happening at Virtual Done Well? Well, that's been an interesting exercise. I'll explain what's happening kind of now, but I expect if you're watching this in 3 or 4 days, it's all going to have changed. That's the problem at the moment. So please bear that in mind. What I'm talking about is I'm shooting this on the 29th of March, so it could have changed a little bit. So what's been happening in our BPO, Virtual Done Well? Well, that was interesting. I was really concerned about the health of our staff there. And if you know Virtual Done Well, I have my own virtual team there within the broader business of Virtual Done Well. And I didn't want the team to kind of get stuck and be rushing around at the last minute, depending on what the local authorities were going to do in terms of lockdowns and so on. So we actually, over a couple of weeks, planned how we were going to move people to work from home for a while. And there was some interesting challenges, obviously, from an IT perspective. There was IT security and making sure that people had, adequate internet at home and that, communication lines were open. How were we going to supervise everybody? And so what happened is we actually moved people out over a 3 or 4 day period. We moved people out in blocks of 6 to 10 so that IT could make sure that everybody was set up. And that was all completed about a week before some of the movement restrictions happened. So that was good. Everybody was at home and settled down by the time that happened. Interestingly enough, a number of people opted to stay in the office. And the restrictions there are quite draconian. It's probably not the right word. I think they're being cautious, really cautious, which is good. Unlike here in Australia, I think we're just being a bit too casual about it. So what happened, basically, they said, unless you have, like a company minibus or something taking people from the office directly to home and that sort of stuff, they either have to work at home or they have to live in the office. And so we had a number of people who, for whatever reason, felt it would be easier to live in the office. So we rented some accommodation above the office, and we have about a dozen people actually living in the office now. So that's 2 different sort of scenarios. And we had some people working who their clients were a little bit, I don't know, a little bit concerned about having a home-based VA, and so that's fine. The VA said, not a problem, we'll move into the office. So what's been the experience of all of that? I haven't got Rona, by the way. This is like the 4th video I've done today. So how has all that been working? Obviously, the people working in the office, other than them being a little bit inconvenienced, because actually it's so strict, they're not allowed to leave the building. So food has to be brought into them, all that kind of stuff. So well done for the people who are working in the office. And then there's a whole bunch working at home. So what have been the major changes? It's been interesting because, and I'm starting to see some of the differences now between home-based VAs and office-based VAs. So I'm talking predominantly for my team. So I have a team of 6 supporting me directly. they're not enjoying working at home at all because they like the interaction in the office and the support and so on. And at home, they're restricted. They all live in different sort of conditions, but they don't necessarily have a lot of space, and they're finding it very distracting. I mean, I worked at home myself for years. There are pros and cons, of course. You walk from your bedroom to your desk kind of in 10 seconds. But if you're confined to home like they are, it can be quite challenging. So some of the things that we're doing team catch-ups twice a day. We do that right across the business, not just with my team. Team leaders are catching up with people, motivating and making sure that they're getting on with the tasks and so on. So that's been an interesting experience. I have to say that my team, who I work most closely with, have been working really well. And I had to enforce some rules like normal working hours. So you're working till 9 till 6 Sydney time. I don't want people working long hours because that's kind of what can happen if you work at home. You go, I'll just finish this, I'll just finish that. And so, nope, we start on time, we finish on time, have your breaks, and that kind of thing. So it's been working really well, but they're all desperately waiting to get back to the office. And some of the disadvantages, of course, of having people working at home, you are at the mercy a little bit of power and internet. And within my team, we've had a couple of people who've experienced power cuts at really awkward times. They've lost their internet at really awkward times. So I think that just sort of strengthens in my mind some of the key benefits of having people who are office-based. Quite apart, of course, from the camaraderie and the mutual support they give each other and all the rest of it. It kind of reminded me that sometimes utilities are not that reliable. So that's been an interesting experience. So what's my team been working on? And it would be very interesting to know what your VAs have been working on. If you have a VA, if you don't, I kind of wonder why. But are you working on different things now to what you were working on? I'd love to know in the comments below. So let me tell you how our stuff has changed a little bit. So my main business is management consulting, a company called Logistics Bureau. And obviously we're doing face-to-face consulting work. Now all my consultants are based at home. So the work has changed a little bit. We're still delivering about 90% of what we were delivering. We're doing that through remote conferencing and all the rest of it, and that's working fine. But my virtual support team are probably working in a slightly different way now. They're setting up lots of online meetings, and that can be, people in all different locations. They were pretty good at that before, but now they're experts on Teams and Zoom and Skype and so on, and coordinating all of that at different time zones. So that's working really well. Probably the biggest change has actually been in some of the stuff we've been doing in marketing. Now, what happens when people go into a crisis and their business is impacted? And I just hope your business isn't too impacted. I mean, it's horrible at the moment, the number of businesses that are going under. So I hope you're okay. But what generally happens when businesses go into crisis is the first cost that they cut is marketing. And I know that's the wrong thing to do. So we actually bumped up our marketing back in January and more in February. And so that's changed a little bit what my team are doing. So we're doing a lot more blog posts now. We're producing a lot more articles and so on about relevant topics, obviously, stuff that's in the news and the relevance to business. We're creating a lot more video. We're doing lots on social media. We've really ramped up our webinar program, and we'll be doing a couple of webinars for this channel as well. And, so all of that online marketing stuff has really cranked up. So it's interesting, I think that's one of the big pluses. And if you're using the services of virtual assistants, I'm sure you're finding the same thing. It just gives you that foundation of resource that can help you keep, essential services going in your business. That's really good. Another funny thing that has kind of impacted us and maybe the broader industry. I'll be upfront with you. I was obviously worried that, for Virtual Done Well, that as we're getting into the crisis and businesses are falling over, we're going to lose clients, and that's not great. It's kind of almost been the opposite. So a lot of people now are jumping on board, particularly from the US, funnily enough, who are saying, we need virtual assistants to help with this and help with that. I'm not sure what's driving that. Maybe because businesses are going through really hard times, they're having to let go local staff and are maybe reaching out for much more cost-effective overseas staff to help them. I'm not sure, that could be part of the reason. We now have a waiting list of clients, and of course, with the various sort of lockdowns and so on that are going on in the Philippines. That creates a little bit of a challenge as well, because we've had to change our recruiting process and hiring process to cater with all of that. But yeah, it's just, a really interesting dynamic. I think, a lot of people are sort of thinking, wow, I've got to be doing more online. I've got to manage my costs. And that seems to be a really good thing for the virtual assistant industry at the moment. Anyway, look, I've rambled on a bit. I was kind of wondering what to talk about this week. So, that really wasn't sort of planned through, but let's just kind of summarize. Certainly in the consulting industry, our business hasn't really been impacted. My virtual team, my virtual support staff are now working just as hard, if not harder than ever, because we've had to pivot to do more online stuff, and so they're helping with that. The BPO industry is probably getting a little bit impacted with travel restrictions and things like that. What we're seeing is that there's more demand for those sort of services as well. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share this week. Now, if you haven't subscribed, you know how this works. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and you'll be notified every time we have a new video coming out, and they come out every Wednesday. And I will say to my editor, Louis, I have a couple of awesome editors based in the Philippines, please put this one out next. Don't leave, because we actually have a bank of videos that we've made, and I don't want this one coming out in 4 weeks because it probably won't be relevant. So get this one out this week, Louis. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.